Assalamualaikum and good morning. So this week is the first week of SAP 2123 plant protection, and I'm Dr. Sabrina. I will cover the pathology part in plant protection. So for this week, the theme for this week is the introduction to plant pathology. We are going to see the significance of plant disease in human history, and also we are going to see how does plant disease occur in plant, and also we are going to look on the effects of plant disease in plant physiological function. So for this week, the lecture will be divided into three parts. First part is on the introduction of plant pathology. So basically on the first part, you will learn about the meaning of plant pathology and also the important disease in human history. And second part will be conducted through Google Meet. I will explain on the plant disease development, how does disease occur, and what's the important factor that need to be considered for the disease development and the process for the disease development. And for the third part, I will send you the pre-recorded video on the effects of plant disease on plant physiological function. So for today, on this video, I will cover on the first part of this week lecture, which is on the on the history of the plant disease on human history. So as a plant science student, so basically we learn about plants. So sometimes we tend to forget that plants can get sick too. So when people get sick, they will see the doctor to get the diagnosis, to get the treatment and advice and so on. But how about plants? As plant is a sessile organism, immobile, so how they are going to see the doctor? Okay, what kind of doctor that need to take care of the plant? And what kind of diagnosis and treatment that should be administered to the plant? And the second part will be on the history, on the significant plant disease that affect on the human in terms of human culture, human belief, and also economic value. So let's move on to the first part. So before we start with a series of lecture on plant pathology, first we need to know what's the meaning of plant pathology, or in other words is phytopathology. So what's the meaning of phytopathology? Phyto means plant. Okay, and the pathology, you can separate the words pathology into two words. Okay, patho is coming from the Greek words pathos, which means suffering, and also emotion. Meanwhile, the logi comes from logos, which means study. So in simple word, in other words, phytopathology means that the study of plant disease, whereby in this study it will combine the knowledge of plant and also microbiology. So people involved in this field will examine the infectious plant pathogens such as fungi, bacteria, nematodes, virus and viroids, and so on. And so those involved in plant pathology study are known as plant pathologists, or in glamour words is plant doctors. So these plant pathologists will study the plant disease to determine how this disease spread. What's the causes of this disease? Either virus, either nematodes or fungi, and how to control this disease. What the best and effective control and management ways to control this disease. So basically, plant pathologists will diagnose the plant problems. So to know that why this plant is unhealthy, what's the causes of this disease, and so on. However, we need to know that the plant did not talk back and also did not complain when we examine them, in contrast with human. And also, we don't need any ethical panel to approve our research. Thereby, as a plant pathologist, you need to seek the hint and clue from the plant itself. And whatever treatment that you will give to the plant is based on your justification. So, if you like microbiology, okay, if you want to be a doctor, you love to learn about pathogens, disease, and so on, but you doesn't like the thought of working with humans or animals, because maybe, like for example, in human you need to deal with patient complaint back, and then a lot of sometimes a lot of attitudes of behavior that you need to deal with. Or for example, in animal there are ethical issues, also in human there are ethical issues that you need to consider when you give, for example, new drugs, new medicine. So you need to consider about this ethical the ethics behind it. So if you don't like this scenario, perhaps you can consider to become a plant doctor. Okay, so in this slide, I give you the link, where in this link you will see a series of YouTube video where you can get to know with the plant pathology fields in not in detail, but will introduce you more on plant pathology. So don't forget to click on this video, and you can watch a series of very short video. So let's move on to the second part on the history of plant disease from the past until present, and the significance of this disease to human. So first, the past disease of wheat, okay, known as smut of wheat. And also this smut not only occur in wheat but also other grain. So this disease was recorded as early as 1900 BCE in ancient Babylon, so around Baghdad and Iraq area. So this disease, smut, so normally the name of the disease is based on the symptoms that you can find on the plant. So the smut, so you can see that this is the grain of the wheat. However, there is also the rotten grain, like a smut. So it rotten and black color. So this is the disease grain of wheat. So we call it as a stinking smut, or other name is common bind of wheat. So if you see at the wheat ear, so you can see that there are several grain that was being infected by the pathogens. So you can see the color, the coloration of the wheat is different compared to the healthy one. Okay. And also another disease that are significant in history is wheat leaf rust. So rust mean it will give the rusty symptoms, in this case on leaf. So because of the appearance of leaf rust, it will affect this disease affect the yield was affected. So because of the yield was affected by this disease, So the Romans create the gods named Robigo and Robigus, where they pray to this god during the harvest time, so that this so-called god will protect their wheat from the pathogens. Okay, so this celebration was also known as Robigalia Festival, and this Robigalia Festival was held in April. So during this festival, they will do their sacrifice to satisfy their god, so that their god will protect their yield, their fields from the disease. So as you can see that in this case, because of the occurrence of the disease, it actually changed the people belief, where the people during that time create another god, so that they have a source to pray for hope, so that their agricultural crops will be protected from this disease, because of their lack of knowledge on how to tackle, on how to manage this disease. Okay, so that was a disease that happened in the past, but it doesn't mean that it's not happen now, but it's still happening, but not that major. Nowadays, the major disease in wheat cultivation is the wheat stem rust. So this pathogen, normally caused by Ustilago mades, was first discovered in Uganda, Africa, where the pathogen will infect the stem. So then you can see the rust symptoms on the wheat stem. And from the Uganda, Africa, the pathogen spread to the world wheat producing countries. So this disease not only affect the yield in Africa, but also affect the wheat production in other wheat producing country. So you can see the significance of the disease and why this is happening, how this disease can be transmitted, can occur in different country, in different continent. So because of the import and export, during the import and export, sometimes people are not realized that they are transporting the disease wheat, the disease grain. So when people use the disease, the farmers use the disease grain and cultivate that disease grain, so you will have one plot with a new disease. That's why it is important to quarantine whatever plant. For example, in Malaysia, you cannot simply bring other plant from other country to Malaysia. You must quarantine the plant, because we don't want any disease from other country to infect our agricultural crop in Malaysia. In simple way, we want to protect our crop. So that's why it is important to learn about the plant pathology. Because of this, you cannot simply go to Thailand and you bring back, for example, the durian seedling. Okay, without proper knowledge, you might bring back pathogen that are virulent in Thailand to Malaysia, which later on it will infect other durian tree in Malaysia. That's for one example. Okay, another disease that are very important in history is the ergot of rye. So the rye is another family of grass. Okay, for example, the difference of rye is in terms of their ears. So these are the rye ears, wheat ears, barley ears, and also spelt ears. So they are basically the grain. So during ancient time, rich people eat bread made from wheat, whereas the poor people ate bread made from rye. So their bread normally are dark colored bread. Okay, so during cool and wet weather, the rye grain normally easily become infected with a fungus, and this fungus will produce a black purplish sclerotium that is known as ergot. Okay, this one. This is actually not the grain. This is actually a sclerotium. Sclerotium is the part of the fungus life cycle. So when people harvest the infected rye together with the sclerotium, and you process the grain into the flour and made into the bread, so you get a contaminated bread. So when people consume this contaminated bread, eventually people will get a disease that called as ergotism. Ergotism ergot have the alkaloid known as ergotamine, where this alkaloid will cause a gangrene. So gangrene, normally you will have a necrosis on some of the human parts, and then later on the necrosis part will fall off. Okay, and besides of this alkaloid, the sclerotium also will produce the hallucinogenic compounds. So normally people who eat the contaminated bread often hallucinated being burned by the fire, and eventually they will die due to the hallucination being burned by the fire. So people call this fire as the Saint Anthony's fire. So during that time, people will say that you are a crazy that people who hallucinated with the fire are crazy people and those things. So they will make a festival to treat you. Okay, so these are very well known in the history. You can try to read more on the Saint Anthony's fire if you are interested about this. Okay, and another significant disease that well known is potato blight. So potato was cultivated first in Peru before it is being introduced into Europe in 1750. So after the potato are being introduced to the Europe, so this potato become the food staple among poor people in Europe. So during that time, the rich people will eat wheat, whereby the poor people will eat the potato. So in Ireland, the landlord will rent their agricultural plot to the farmers. So because they have to pay the rental fees, so in order to survive, they will eat and consume more potato. So in 1850s, when during the wet and cool summers, the potato are being attacked by a potato disease that known as late blight. So during that time, they didn't know what are the pathogens that cause this late blight. However, these diseases are very serious, where there is a great reduction in potato yield. So as I mentioned before, the poor people are heavily dependent on the potato as their food. So when the potato yield are greatly reduced, so there is a potato famine or the Great Hunger of 1855, where during this time around 1 million people died due to hunger, and also 1.5 million people left Ireland. So due to the migration of 1.5 million people, so you can find the Irish descendant in United States of America, in Canada, in other parts of world, and also other continents. So you can see that how important and serious this disease can give to the human society. So it can result to the human migration and also human population. Okay, so nowadays these diseases are still occurring in the potato, and the pathogen not only attack potato but also currently they attack the tomato. So with the new knowledge, okay, and also technology, the plant pathologists managed to identify the pathogens. So they managed to identify that the pathogen that caused this potato leaf blight is actually Phytophthora infestans. So during that time, we don't have the genomics technology. So people are questioning where the how come the Phytophthora infestan can occur in Europe, because previously there is no incidence of Phytophthora infestans. And just recently, because of the technology in omics, people finally can trace back where the origins of Phytophthora infestan. So they found that the Phytophthora infestan was originated from South American country. So during the import and export process, so accidentally they transport the infected potato. So you transmit the pathogen from one continent to other continents. So that's why it is very important to know about the plant disease. And another disease is coffee rust. So before this, not before this, sorry. So nowadays, when we look at the British people, when you go to UK, you often associated that, okay, British people will drink tea. Okay, they are British people are very synonym with tea. But did you know that before that, British people used to drink coffee? Okay, so coffee is a popular beverage in Europe since 90s, 1600s. Okay, however, during 1800s, the fungal disease coffee rust infected the British coffee plantation in Ceylon or Sri Lanka. So because of that, there was not enough coffee bean that was being produced. So due to that, British people switched to, instead of grow heavily dependent on the coffee cultivation, they switched to growing tea and also drinking tea. So that's why you can find the tea in Sri Lanka area. Okay, so you can see that this disease, okay, so from all these diseases that I mentioned, from the human history, all these diseases not only effect on the human belief, human culture, and also demography, but also in terms of human lifestyle. So it's not only this plant disease not only affect the plant itself, but also effect on human, because we consume plants. So I believe that plant pathology is a very interesting area where you can learn how to treat plant, but also you can learn how to give a better food to people. Okay, maybe I didn't mention in this slide, but there are also another case of plant disease that whereby this pathogen produce toxin, and when you eat the food that have this toxin, you will get the effect. So there are important it is important to learn about the plant disease, because at the end we consume most of our food are coming from the plant. Okay, so that's all for the first part. If you have any question, you can email me your question, or you can just simply comment in the Ita'alim. You can post your question in the Ita'alim, or also Google Drive, or also you can ask your question during our live session in Google Meet. So that's all. Thank you very much for your attention and have a nice day.